Have you ever experienced that spine-tingling feeling of being alone at night when every sound seems amplified and the darkness feels alive? In this video, we'll share true chilling alone at night horror stories that will make you question what lurks just beyond your sight. From unsettling encounters with strangers to eerie noises that break the silence, these tales will leave you breathless. But before we delve into tonight's terrifying tales, a huge shout out to all of you. Your support fuels this channel and keeps the nightmares coming. If our eerie stories captivate you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a chilling episode. And if you want to help us grow and keep the fear alive, share our videos, drop a comment, or explore our support options on Patreon or Ko-fi. Every bit of support helps us bring you the best spine-tingling content. Thank you for joining us on this dark journey. Now let's embrace the shadows together. It was a chilly October night, and I found myself home, alone in my new apartment. I just moved in a week ago, and every creak and groan of the old building felt foreign and unsettling. The neighborhood was quiet. Too quiet, really. I decided to binge-watch a horror series to set the mood. As the hours passed, I got lost in the show, only glancing at my phone when I heard it buzz. It was a message from my friend Sarah. "Just remember to lock your door." I chuckled, rolling my eyes. I always locked my door. Still, I got up to double-check. Just as I reached it, I heard a soft tapping sound, barely audible over the show. It came from the window. Frowning, I walked over and peered out into the darkness. The streetlight illuminated the sidewalk, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary, just shadows. I shook my head, convinced it was just my imagination. I returned to the couch, trying to focus on the show again, but that tapping wouldn't stop. It was rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. My heart raced. I got up once more and approached the window, opening it slightly to let in the cool night air. "Hello, is someone there?" I called out, but all I heard was the rustling of leaves. Feeling foolish, I closed the window and tried to push the thought away, but the tapping resumed, louder and more insistent. I moved to the kitchen, hoping a glass of water would calm my nerves. As I filled the glass, I caught a glimpse of movement in the reflection of the kitchen window. I spun around, but there was nothing outside. Shaking, I decided it was time to turn off the TV and go to bed. I brushed my teeth quickly, but just as I climbed under the covers, the tapping started again, now accompanied by a soft whisper. I couldn't make out the words, but it sent chills down my spine. I tossed my phone aside and tried to shake off the feeling, but sleep eluded me. Instead, I lay in the dark, listening to the tapping and whispers that seemed to echo in the silence. Suddenly, a loud crash came from the living room. My heart raced. I grabbed my phone for light and crept toward the sound. The shadows seemed to stretch around me, deepening my sense of dread. As I entered the living room, I froze. The coffee table was flipped over and my front door stood ajar. Panic surged through me as I rushed to the door, closing it with shaking hands. I locked it, feeling a brief moment of safety, but then I heard it again, tapping, now from somewhere deeper in the apartment. It was relentless, echoing through the stillness. "Who's there?" I called, my voice trembling. No answer, just the tapping, mixed with that haunting whisper, closer than before. Summoning my courage, I took a deep breath and turned on the lights. The apartment lit up, but it was empty. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but it was short-lived. Just as I started to relax, I heard soft laughter behind me. I spun around, heart in my throat, but again found nothing. Panicking, I ran to the bedroom and bolted the door. The laughter lingered, blending with whispers that seemed to float through the walls. I pressed my back against the wall, breath quickening as the tapping resumed, louder, relentless, like fingers drumming against the door. I was about to grab my phone to call for help, but the battery icon blinked, dead. A cold shiver coursed through me. In that moment, I knew I wasn't alone. The door handle rattled, slowly turning, but the door didn't budge. Panic flooded my senses, and just when I thought I might be safe, I heard a voice from the other side, a chilling sing-song tone. "Let me in, Jamie," I screamed, stumbling back in terror. The laughter returned, echoing through the apartment, filling the darkness with a dread I knew I couldn't escape. The next morning, my neighbor found my door wide open, the apartment empty. Only silence remained, but the faint sound of tapping lingered in the walls, haunting the place long after I was gone. At 17, I found myself living in my parents' basement, a space that felt more like an in-law suite than a typical subterranean dwelling. It was cozy, furnished with a small couch and a TV, and since my parents traveled frequently for work, I often had the place to myself. On those rare occasions when I was alone, I relished the freedom it offered, late-night gaming sessions and snacks galore without the watchful eyes of my parents. One particular week, they were gone, leaving me to enjoy the solitude. It was a Saturday evening, and with no school to worry about and the day stretching ahead of me, I decided to take a trip to the store. I had heard that a storm was brewing, so I wanted to stock up on snacks and ingredients for dinner before the rain hit. As I drove back, dark clouds gathered ominously overhead, and soon the storm unleashed its fury. Rain poured down in sheets, making it difficult to see the road ahead, even with my windshield wipers at full speed. I finally made it home, relieved to escape the downpour. I dashed from the car to the front door, eager to get inside and dry off. Once I was inside, I headed straight for the kitchen, flipping on the oven to prepare my dinner. Just as I settled in, a strange noise caught my attention, a thud from below, like a box falling over in the basement. My heart raced. My first thought was of a potential leak or flood. I quickly set down what I was doing and made my way to the basement. Flipping on the light, I descended the stairs, half expecting to find water rushing in. But as I reached the bottom, everything seemed quiet. I walked through the main area, glancing around. The familiar sight of my couch and TV provided little comfort as I headed toward the storage room, the only unfinished part of the basement filled with boxes and miscellaneous items. At first glance, everything appeared to be in order. But then something caught my eye. One of the boxes was ajar, its contents strewn across the floor. Curiosity quickly turned to dread as I saw that it was filled with my parents' old trophies, many of them broken. It looked as if the box had toppled over and someone had hastily tried to throw everything back inside. A chilling realization washed over me. This wasn't just a messy accident. Suddenly, the sounds of the storm outside grew louder, drowning out any other noise and amplifying my unease. I felt a surge of panic rise within me as I began to back away from the storage room, scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. Just as I turned to leave, I heard a loud crash. One of the boxes in the back of the room fell, and from behind it, a figure emerged, charging straight toward me. Instinct took over, and I bolted for the stairs, my heart racing. The sound of his footsteps thundered behind me, fueling my fear. I stumbled on the last step, crashing to the ground, my mind racing with horrifying scenarios. But as I turned to look, the intruder had reached the top of the staircase and dashed for the front door, bursting out into the stormy night. I scrambled to my feet, quickly locking the door behind him, my hands trembling. After catching my breath, I called the police, my heart still pounding in my chest. They arrived soon after and found an unlocked window he had used to enter the house, but despite their search, they couldn't provide an answer for why he had come into our home. The mystery hung heavy in the air, leaving me with a lingering sense of unease that would follow me long after the storm had passed. It was a typical Friday night, and I was home alone, curled up on the couch in my dimly lit apartment. The rain tapped against the windows, creating a soothing rhythm that made it easy to drift into a comfortable trance. I had just finished dinner and decided to binge-watch a new thriller series. Around 10 p.m., the show was getting intense when I heard a soft knock on the front door. It was faint, almost hesitant, but it jolted me from my focus. I paused the show and glanced at the clock. Who could be knocking at this hour? Curiosity piqued, I got up and tiptoed to the door. I peered through the peephole and saw a figure standing there, a tall man, his features obscured by the shadow of the hallway. He wore a dark hoodie and his head was bowed, as if he were checking his phone. "Hello?" I called out, unsure if I should even open the door. No response, just more rain pattering on the ground. I took a step back, feeling an uncomfortable sensation crawling up my spine. I was alone, and my instincts told me to keep the door locked. Just then I heard a muffled voice. "Hey, I think I lost my keys. Can you let me in? I live next door." I hesitated. I had seen my neighbor a few times but hadn't talked to him much. Something about the way he said it felt off, like he was trying too hard to sound casual. "I'm sorry, but I can't open the door right now," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "Please," he urged, sounding more desperate. "It's really cold out here and I just need to get inside for a moment." I backed away from the door, trying to think. The last thing I wanted was to invite a stranger into my home. I decided to call the building manager to verify the neighbor's story. As I picked up my phone, the knocking resumed, more insistent this time. "Come on, I really need your help," he shouted, frustration creeping into his tone. "Just a second, please." A chill ran through me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I glanced at the window, where rain continued to pour. Then I noticed movement in the corner of my eye, shadows shifting outside. My heart raced. I had to do something. I hurried to the kitchen, grabbed a knife and crept back to the door, holding my breath. The knocking had stopped, and I strained to hear anything through the heavy rain. Suddenly, I heard a loud crash from the living room. I froze, heart pounding in my chest. My mind raced. Was it a window? Something falling? I quietly set the knife down and tiptoed to the living room, praying it was just my imagination. As I entered the room, I saw that my coffee table had been knocked over. Panic surged. I glanced around, but it was empty. The TV was still on, casting eerie shadows across the walls. I turned back toward the door, my heart racing. I was about to call out when I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Someone was behind me. "Let me in," the voice called again, but it wasn't from the door. It was coming from the dark corner of the room. I whipped around, gripping the knife tightly. My pulse thundered in my ears. The figure stepped into the light, a silhouette of the man from the hallway, now standing in my living room, his eyes glinting with something sinister. "I just wanted to come in," he said, a smirk spreading across his face. "It's so much warmer in here." "Who let you in?" I stammered, backing away. My instincts screamed at me to run. "You did, remember?" He took a step closer, and I raised the knife defensively. "You were so inviting." I darted toward the kitchen, heart racing, praying he wouldn't follow. But I could hear his footsteps echoing behind me, slow and deliberate. The adrenaline surged and I flung myself into the kitchen, searching for a way out. "Please don't do this," I pleaded, voice trembling. I grabbed my phone, fumbling to dial for help, but my hands were shaking too much. "Don't you see? This is all part of the fun," he said, his voice low and mocking. "You should have just let me in." I found the back door and yanked it open, rain pouring down on me as I stumbled outside. I didn't look back, sprinting down the slick pavement, the sound of his laughter trailing behind me. The night felt alive with danger as I raced toward the nearest streetlight, heart pounding in my chest. I glanced back once, but he was gone, swallowed by the darkness. I made it to a neighbor's house, banging on the door with all my strength. As they opened it, I gasped for breath, desperately explaining what happened. But as the door closed behind me, I felt a deep sense of dread. I was safe, at least for now, but I could still hear the faint echo of his voice in my mind. "Let me in." The rain kept falling, but the storm inside me was just beginning. I knew that I wasn't just dealing with an intruder, I was dealing with something much darker. The nightmare was far from over. Last winter, I embarked on an 18-hour road trip to visit some college friends. To break up the long journey, I drove in 2 segments of about 9 hours each, stopping overnight at an Airbnb along the way. For the return trip, I opted for a different Airbnb, hoping to explore some new scenery. Due to heavy snowfall, my arrival was delayed, and I finally reached my destination around 9 p.m. I knew the area was small, having already seen how few significant towns dotted the route. The town where my Airbnb was located was notably smaller than the one I'd stayed at previously. It had a handful of shops lining the road, but the houses were either part of farms or quite spaced apart. When I arrived at the Airbnb, it was set far from the nearest neighbor. The exterior had a modernized cabin vibe that felt somewhat out of sync with the surrounding homes. After parking on the gravel driveway, I entered the house using the code I had received. The interior matched the pictures I had seen online, and after settling into my bedroom, I made my way to the living room. Just as I plopped down on the couch and grabbed the remote, I heard a soft tapping noise from behind me. Turning around, I was startled to see a woman outside, tapping on the window. Her unkempt hair and wild eyes gave her an unsettling appearance. Once she caught my gaze, she pointed toward the front door and walked away from the window. Still feeling a rush from the surprise, I approached the door, figuring she was just an eccentric local. Although I wasn't terrified, I didn't feel entirely at ease either. When I cracked the door open, she smiled and said she needed assistance. I hesitated, waiting for her to elaborate, but instead, she repeated her request, claiming she had lost something on the road outside. Peering into the darkness, I couldn't see anything past the faint glow of the Airbnb's lights. "I'm not sure I can help with that," I replied. Her smile faded, and she reiterated her story almost word for word. "I really can't assist, sorry," I said, gently closing the door. I listened as she walked away, unsure whether she was just a harmless eccentric or if there was something more unsettling about the situation. It was certainly a peculiar welcome to this quiet town. I relaxed on the couch and watched TV until around 11 p.m. Before heading to bed, I still felt a bit on edge, making it hard to fall asleep. I remember tossing and turning for what felt like an hour before suddenly waking in the middle of the night. There was a faint noise coming from the front of the house, and in the stillness, it was hard to ignore. My mind immediately flashed back to the woman from earlier as I cautiously made my way down the hallway toward the front door. Just as I reached the door, I felt someone pushing against it from the outside. I pressed my body against the door, determined not to let whoever it was in. It felt like a struggle, and for a moment I worried that they might overpower me. But then they relented and sprinted away down the gravel driveway. I quickly locked the door and rushed to the window, trying to catch a glimpse of them, but they had already disappeared into the night. In a state of panic, I decided to gather my things and leave. I didn't want to stay in that house any longer, knowing that the police in such a small town might not be able to help. Whoever was on the other side of that door had to be connected to the woman from before. If I had gone out to assist her, or if I had woken up just a moment later, I fear I might not have made it out of that night unscathed. If you've encountered a terrifying event, or have a spine-chilling horror story to share, we at Eerie Shadows want to hear from you. Share your experiences with us and let's uncover the mysteries lurking in the eerie shadows together. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel for more eerie tales and spine-chilling stories like this one.